Welcome to the EX Factor, where we discuss the practical application of building an employee experience as your competitive advantage. I'm Mark Lewis, CEO of Crewmojo, a platform for automating and managing a more personalised and meaningful employee experience. Thank you very much, Padam, for joining us on the X Factor podcast. I'd love to welcome you and potentially start by giving us a little overview about your role and what you do in VicHealth.
Sure. Thanks very much for the invitation, Mark. Yes, VicHealth is the peak health promotion agency of the Victorian State Government. So our role is to ensure a healthier and fairer Victoria, and we do that utilising a systems approach to health promotion and prevention of chronic and non-communicable diseases. So my role, a newly created role a couple of years ago, is executive lead, so head of people and culture.
Awesome. And I understand, so what you've just described about VicHealth,
Yes,
they've been around for like 30 years, I understand. So I think it's well before its time. Tell me a little bit about your journey with your time there.
Yeah. So I've been with the organisation 2.5 years, and what really drew me to VicHealth is that very much that purpose-driven organisation. We are the world's first health promotion agency. So a really courageous decision back in the mid-1980s to use a hypothecated tax on tobacco, a harmful product, to fund at that particular point the buyout of sporting sponsorships.
Amazing.
And over time, our remit has moved even more so into the health promotion space beyond tobacco, that anti-tobacco, that still forms a really significant part of the work that we do. And so that's the journey that we've been, or they're the roots, and that's the journey that we've been on. And now looking at a systems approach to health promotion. So not saying it's individuals who don't have the willpower or don't have the education or don't have the resources to look after their health, but that we're all part of a system and multiple systems that impact our health. So the core systems that we work in are commercial and economic systems. So how does the world of business and products interact with consumers and their health? The neighbourhood and built environment. So how do the places that we work and play and live impact our health? And then the final one is food systems. So how can we create a fairer and more sustainable food system, all the way from production through to waste management? And so, as to answer your question, what drew me, as I said, was really purpose-driven organisation, and an organisation that needs to continue to be very connected to the community that we serve. And so that's really exciting from a HR and people and culture perspective of connecting people to the strategy and to the community that we serve.
And so tell me a little bit about the structure. So it's a government department, is that right? Tell us about how that works.
Yeah, sure. So we are a statutory agency of the state government, so constituted under our own act, the Tobacco Act of 1987, though we always joke that it should be called the Anti-Tobacco Act. So that act, that protects us. We have an appropriation from state government. We have an independent board of 14, 3 members of whom are politicians, one from each side of politics and an independent member. And pardon me. So we have that independence. So we talk about working with government, not for government. We're nominally an agency under the Department of Health, but as I said, we're at arm's length. So we can use we have a policy and government relations team. We have a research and impact team. So we can bring all of those levers to bear in providing advice to government and in pushing the agenda around health promotion, health prevention. So as I said, an independent statutory agency of the Victorian Government.
Flipping towards the performance side of things now and the internal side, how does your performance system connect with the strategy of the organisation to support the organisation in meeting its objectives?
Yeah, great question. And it's been that focus and what I talked about before, and just connecting us to strategy and to the community. So we've worked through trying to make sure that individuals in the organisation who are, experts in their field, well educated, well versed in areas around public health, health promotion, health prevention, really see their work in a broader context. So they're not just working in their narrow field of expertise or specialty, but that they can see how that impacts both the strategy of VicHealth, but also the community. And so we've utilised, and what was always in our mind about the performance process was, how do we make those linkages for people? And the performance management system's been a really crucial part of that.
Well, it sounds like as well having that type of strategy builds a lot of purpose around individuals' roles, because it sounds to me from what you've described there, they really understand how whilst it's very deep and subject matter expertise oriented, they are very connected to how that's translating to the big picture.
They are, and I think the role for us as executive leaders in the organisation and as a people and culture team is to just help make those connections. Sometimes people kind of perhaps intuitively understand it, but can't necessarily always see those connections every day. Sometimes we have a lot of early career staff who also, we need to help them connect the dots. So again, intrinsically or intuitively, they know it, but just making that explicit for them is really important.
Can you share any examples as to how you help people to connect those dots? So how do the people and culture team actually go about seeding those connections for people to see their work in the bigger picture?
Yeah, so one of the things that our CEO, Sandro DeMeo, and I worked on quite early on in my tenure was to start to build a quarterly business rhythm. Every quarter, an executive leadership team meeting. So it's an extended meeting, 1 or 2 days, kind of looking at the strategy, looking at the plans, looking at the quarter ahead. Coming out of that, our managers have a half day or a day where we kind of say to them, here are the things we talked about at the executive team. Here are kind of the areas of focus for the coming quarter. That can kind of be embedded in the work they do and in terms of their plans for the coming quarter. And then off the back of that, we have a quarterly business update. And so that's an opportunity for bringing all of our team together. And we've just had one last Thursday, and that's an update from our CEO. Might be some big pieces of work that again have come out of those 2 previous meetings that we want our teams to understand. Maybe some workshops, a piece of professional development. So a recent one was just around climate and health that we did last week. And so then people can come out of that and say, okay, I see how my work fits in the bigger purpose. And out of the back of that quarterly business update, they should sit with their manager and look at their goals and say, okay, from what I've heard, does anything need to change or shift? And then the cycle kind of continues. So that's a really tangible way through that process that we make sure that we're continuing to connect dots for people, and that people can course correct through the course of a year. Their goals are not something they just set and then forget.
That's fantastic. And is it largely, it sounds like it's quite forward looking, that whole process. Is there any level of review of the previous quarter as part of that quarterly business process?
Yeah, there is. And we did, and it's really fresh in my mind. So it's good timing that we're having this chat. I mean, last Thursday, sort of the last hour of that quarterly business update, which was each and every team talking about what they've been proud of in 2023. So, every team, and this was team members, not managers or execs, getting up and talking about what they were most proud of in 2023. So there's certainly that element of reflecting and saying, hey, this is all the great work that we've done. Because like a lot of organizations, you can get onto that treadmill and just keep going, all right, we've done that, tick, on to the next thing, without really sitting and reflecting.
I'm very guilty of that myself.
Oh, we all are. We all are, because obviously, the emails keep coming in, the phone calls keep coming in, the requests keep coming in. And the work that we do, and similar for a lot of organizations, it's great work. We don't get anything that comes in which is like that's not actually worth doing at some level. And so it's really, really important for us to kind of take stock and say, well, here's where we can have our biggest impact.
So it also sounds there from something you just mentioned that there's a level of involvement of employees in the whole process. Now, for many people, performance processes can have this sort of scary feeling about it. Yeah. How do you want employees in VicHealth to feel about performance, and how would you describe that they feel about the whole performance process?
Yeah, really good question. Probably one for me to look into our upcoming employee engagement results to see how they're actually feeling. And we are right in the middle of the process. We have an October to September.
It's good, capturing feedback.
Yeah, capturing feedback, absolutely. Look, we have a couple of elements of our remuneration review. One is a CPI increase under our enterprise agreement, and we have a separate agreement to the rest of the Victorian public sector. And then we have a performance increment, and you have to achieve 3 out of the 5 goals that you set yourself, stretch goals that you set yourself. But there's not a rating scale as such. So while there is that hurdle of 3 out of 5, you're not ranking people in a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever ranking scale you might have. So I think that takes some element of the pressure out, but no doubt there's an element that, I've got to reach my 5 goals, otherwise I won't get my increment. And it's not a small sum of money either. It's 3.5% in terms of moving up the bands. So I think there is that part where there is probably a little bit of inherent kind of tension, if you like, in that particular process. But I think if I go back to answering the question about how employees feel, what we tried to consciously do is incorporate feedback and performance in the flow of work. So there are regular one-on-ones through the Crewmojo platform. There are the regular quarterly check-ins. There are opportunities in the one-on-ones to talk about learning and development, about wellbeing. So I would like to think, though, very happy to kind of test that more formally, that people don't have that level of fear because there are less surprises in terms of coming to that end of year process.
I think as well, it's 1, less surprises, and 2, it's a very holistic approach that you've just described there. It's not solely on the performance goals. You've just mentioned there that there's well-being, there's professional development. So it's a more whole of person approach rather than just what is your contribution. It sounds about what the organisation is giving back to people as well.
Yeah, 100%. And I think something the pandemic has taught us, if nothing else, and it's taught us a lot of things, is that we need to focus on our health and our well-being in order to be able to be our best selves, and therefore then to do our best work and to serve our stakeholders, customers, communities. And so it was really important for us to put that piece into the one-on-ones, and it's an optional. So, people don't necessarily want to talk about their well-being at every single one-on-one, and for example, within our team, we do one-on-ones on a weekly basis. So, coming into someone's health and well-being every single week, how are you feeling? What have you done for your well-being? Is not the kind of the route we want to go down, but it is.
Yeah, otherwise it becomes box ticking, doesn't it?
It becomes box ticking, that's right. And so what we've said to managers is, if you see a change in behavior, if you see something change in that individual, that's a time when you can perhaps use that.
Fantastic.
That particular optional extra in the one-on-ones. And we've also tried to use some strengths-based language as well, very much tied to our core health promotion business, and agency for individuals. So what have you done for helping your wellbeing? What support can we provide you to even better manage your health and wellbeing? So it's some of those kinds of questions are very important.
Very much encouraging people to take ownership of their own performance rather than being a top-down approach. That's really good. How much scope, being government oriented as well, do you have to take your own sort of design versus balance with what's required from government perspective?
Really good question. I think we are very lucky as a statutory agency, independent of government. We have been able to, from a people and culture perspective, run our own race in a lot of respects. And one of the things that I've been, really pleasantly surprised about and lucky to have had is that I can kind of almost dip in and dip out in certain aspects of leveraging expertise from other parts of government, but not necessarily being tied to using all of the same systems. I talked about the engagement survey before. We participate in the whole of state government People Matter survey because that's both gives us benchmarking data and information, but it means we don't have to build it ourselves. But something like performance management, we've been able to run our own race in that respect and purchase something and build something that's fit for purpose for an organisation of our size.
Now, some people have a perception that government is dull, and everything
surely not. No.
Everything I've seen that VicHealth do is riddled with colour. So maybe just tell us a little bit about that. Even in your actual reviews are just glorious colour everywhere. Tell us about that.
I think you're absolutely right. And my background is not government. So I've spent my whole career, other than this last 2.5 years, in the private sector in various capacities. And we've really tried to, in our office layout, and we are the Victorian Health Promotion Hub, so our partner organisations can come and use this space like a serviced office type arrangement. We have partnerships with universities, so we have our research fellows who are jointly funded by the university and by us. They come and sit here as well. So we've tried to create this environment that is much more about the ecosystem for health and health promotion. And so if we're doing that in kind of the physical environment, if we're doing that in our relationships externally, then our kind of internal processes need to kind of reflect that as well. And so in our work, Crewmojo, as you say, colour, having pictures of our working environment, so people can really feel connected and that it's something that they can see themselves in. So, government doesn't necessarily need to just be staid and flat and two-dimensional, and we've tried to bring that in there as part of that whole ethos of being much more connected to the external community.
Yeah, I love it. I think you've got some of the most colourful and picturesque performance reviews I've seen. Something as well that really stood out, and I'd love to learn a bit more about, is I see you guys have got something called a culture charter. So what does that mean? How does it come to life? How does it translate to on the ground activity with employees?
So this is one of the areas, being part of government, we needed to make sure that we had the right level of alignment, but sort of the right level of distance, if you like, or separation is probably a better word. So the Victorian public sector as a whole, so the government departments and all of the agencies, are required to abide by the Victorian Public Sector Commission, VPSC Code of Conduct, and a set of 7 values, public sector values. And so we didn't want to, nor should we have just come up with our own set of values, and people go, well, am I supposed to follow these values or am I meant to follow these values? So there was a process going back a few years ago, where team members came together and they built the VicHealth Employee Culture Charter. So there is alignment with, and certainly nothing that fights against the VPSC values, but they're very specific to VicHealth. And what's, I think, really important in them is that they have what we will stand for and what we won't stand for. And I think that's sometimes really, really important when it comes to values, because sometimes it's easier to say, oh, someone's not demonstrating something, or you know something's not right when you see it, but sometimes we can't necessarily pick, oh, that is the value in the positive sense, if you like.
Yeah.
And so we have incorporated those employee culture charter principles into our reviews and into the goal setting process as well. And so that's how we look at those coming to life. And we have an end of year celebration that's coming up in a couple of weeks' time. And what we also do is have a process whereby colleagues can nominate culture champions. So people who through the course of the year have demonstrated all 4 of our culture charter principles. And we've just built and deployed a new tile on Crewmojo that allows people to do that. So again, that process of kind of building that feedback into the flow of work and into a tool that people are already familiar with.
You beat me to the punch there, because I was definitely going to ask you about our about the culture champion nomination, because I'd heard that was underway. Tell us about what that process looks like in a little bit more detail. How does it manifest? What does someone see when they click the button to nominate?
Yeah, so basically what they see when they start the nomination process is a value will come up, and it will basically have the statements of, under this particular value. So let's say it's results. And so, we will stand for da 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 da, and then it will say we won't stand for da 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 da. And then there'll be a section that says, how has this individual displayed this culture charter principle through the course of 2023? And so then there's the opportunity for someone to complete that. And they do the same for all 4 principles, and then submit their nomination. And all those nominations will be collated, and then the executive leadership team will review those. And then those winners, and there can be multiple winners. It's not just one from each business unit or group, multiple winners across multiple areas. And it's just a real great energy and buzz when we come to our end of year celebration to recognise those people.
And how much is it balanced on like the number of votes that an individual gets versus because I can imagine the quality of the statements that people write about individuals would also carry some weight as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, we look at some of the pieces, where's someone perhaps done a major piece of work with a stakeholder, where someone's done a major piece of work to help an internal business process to save time or effort or dollars. We do, obviously, as an executive leadership team, look at those kinds of areas to discern. So it could be that, we get one nomination for one person. It has a number of those elements, and we're like, that's great. It's one nomination for this particular individual, but they're really deserving. In other cases, there might be 3 or 4 nominations for an individual. And again, by pulling all those parts together, sometimes one person will see one element of what someone does, and another person will see another element, and we can recognize that individual. And obviously there are times where we look at them and we say, compared to these others, are they doing things in those particular areas? And those nominations may not get up.
What a great initiative! And is this annual, or is it more often? How does it work cycle wise?
Yeah, this is annual. This is annual. What we have done in some of those quarterly business updates I mentioned earlier is to do what we call an appreciation station. So this has actually come up through
I
one
love
of
the
the,
language. Yeah.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
one of the teams came up with this. They were doing it in their group and team meetings, and they suggested it would be a really great thing to do in one of our quarterly business updates. So basically, what we do is we sort of have 3 or 4 statements up on sort of pin boards around the room. People get a whole load of post-it notes and they can write up, thanking someone for doing something, and then they just get pinned up on those. A few people can sort of read them out where they're happy to do that, and then they kind of get typed up, and we've got a notice board in one of the common areas, and people can come and see those statements from the last quarterly business update or QBU. And so there are lots of, like, we do try and have a couple of those different touch points through the year.
I think that's so powerful on 2 levels. Firstly, the fact it was invented by a team themselves, and then that's grown to become an all of company initiative really feels so powerful that it's come from employees rather than, again, top down.
100%.
And secondly, as you say, to have it, making it multiple touch points, it really makes it real, that it's not this, again, it's not a tick box thing that you just happen to do and it's like we're addressing it off the side. Instead, it's something that really is baked into your culture, and it's something that people obviously, as you say, take a lot of energy from the process. It's really exciting.
Exactly. And coming back to that comment you made before, Mark, about that health and well-being and the one-on-one, not doing it every single time so it just feels like a tick box. We didn't do it in the last quarterly business update because what we wanted to do was celebrate what the teams had done over the course of 2023. And it was also their opportunity to explain their work to the rest of their colleagues. And so for us, it had the kind of twofold benefit of showcasing what teams had done, showcasing that to all of their colleagues, but then allowing everybody to link what they were doing to the purpose of the organisation.
Weaving it into your natural flow of work rather than it being a thing on the side.
When we started on that high performance journey, we went out to people and asked them for their feedback. And what they said to us were 2 things that came out. One is, I don't want to solely be reliant on my manager's capability, and I wanted everything to be in the flow of my work. I didn't want it to be additional. That's right. Because we're all busy enough. I don't want to have another meeting to talk about performance. In my regular one-on-one, embed this feedback process.
And I think seeking that feedback at the very beginning about what employees liked and what they don't like, again, helps to build that buy-in when you come with the updated system to actually roll out.
Absolutely. And so we were absolutely 100% able to link it back and say, you told us these things, and we've been able to weave these into the process.
I feel like we've done a few good dives and detail, which is really good. Maybe if you can just describe the big picture, like what are the key components of the performance? I know we've touched on it already, but just to give our listeners some clarity over how does the key components shape up from an overall system perspective? Just walk us through that.
So we have a one-on-one process, which many organisations, if not all organisations, do. That individual one-on-one conversation with individual with their manager, and that is a minimum monthly conversation. Now, most teams would have that either a weekly or a fortnightly catch-up. And one of the really important things with that process is that the CEO has those with each of us as his executive leaders. The one-on-one is kind of the core, the heart of the process, and it's role modeled. The second part is the quarterly review. And then on an annual basis, people sit down and review their performance, as said, against those 5 goals and against the culture charter. And they get an opportunity to talk about the support they've received from their manager, the professional development they've had for the year. What else could their manager do to help them improve their performance? Again, that strengths-based language. And then the goal setting process happens in Crewmojo for
Yep.
the coming year. So they're the three kind of touch points for the core touch points for us. And then there are a couple of those adjunct pieces, whether it's the culture champion nomination process or the 2 pulse surveys that we run through the Crewmojo platform, sort of in 4 months after the People Matters survey, or 4 months after and 4 months before the People Matters survey.
Tell us about that pulse survey. What's the purpose of it? What sort of questions are you asking of people there?
Yeah, so it's a process we've just instituted. So we've just gone through the People Matters survey in October, and so 3 months prior we ran the People Matters survey. The pulse survey, and there was just 7 questions plus a free text, and so the 7 questions were linked to important questions from the People Matters survey, and so they were around. I understand how my role connects to the purpose and the strategy of the organisation,
Nice.
how well my work group works with others in the organisation, and one question was very specific to this survey, and we may or may not ask it in future ones. We've been doing a lot of work around cultural safety, anti-racism work, because all of these things absolutely impact health of individuals and families and communities. And so we just asked, because we've been doing a bit of work in that space, about are people encouraged to think about and question those concepts in their work? And so it's we see it that there'll be 5 or 6 core questions that we'd probably ask survey to survey to survey, so we can kind of get that longitudinal aspect of the results, and there'll probably be 1, maybe 2 questions that we just in time related to specific projects or programs we're running.
So it sounds like it's largely focused on, again, getting feedback for you as an organisation as to the effectiveness of the programs that you've been running throughout. So it's that sort of, as you say, a pulse to check in. Are these initiatives working? So we've described all about how we connect people's work to the bigger picture, and then you're actually asking them as well and saying, okay, how effective is this?
Yes.
And that gives you the data to know whether those initiatives are being effective through the organisation.
Correct. And I know people are interested also in kind of hearing what hasn't worked as well, or what are learning opportunities. And what was really interesting out of that pulse survey is that those questions those 5 or 6 questions that were our core questions, we got quite good scores for those. For the newer piece of work around that cultural safety, anti-racism, those scores were not much lower, but they were significantly lower. So we could definitely show that, hey, we've done all this work in these areas, the scores are higher, we've only just started this work, the scores are lower, and it just shows us that there's more work to do.
Yeah.
And so that was a really good touch point. And so each of the executives took their results and were able to share it with their teams and say, these are our results. These are results for each of the other groups, business units. We call them groups. And here's the overall VicHealth result.
Awesome.
And say, okay, here are some of the actions we're looking to take.
What I really like about the entire approach that you're taking here as well is, I don't want to use it as a buzzword, but it's agile. You're not just implementing a single system from a process perspective and saying that's it, we're done and dusted. You've got new initiatives that you've brought in, you've tweaked it up, you're making changes, so you're constantly improving your actual performance system based on what the organization needs, and also the feedback that you're getting from employees. So it's something that's under a constant improvement, as well as every other process that you're working with.
That's exactly right. We started off, and one of the things I was very much adamant about was we only turned on one tile at the beginning.
Yeah.
So when people came into the
Way to go.
system, there was only one tile there, the one-on-one
Yep.
tile. And we let that run for, I want to say, about 2 months,
Yep.
2 to 3 months. There was nothing else other than just that one tile. And what it meant was, I think there was a selfish part for me, for our team, which was no one's going to get any questions of where to click because there's only one place to go.
Yeah.
But more importantly, people would they knew what to do, where to go. This was the focus, and it really did focus people on that piece. And because we were responding to, and not perfectly, but because we were responding to big chunks of the feedback around consistency, not relying solely on my manager's capability and memory, the one-on-ones were very powerful.
Look, I think that's probably one of the smartest pieces of advice that I could share with the listeners as well, is starting small, because you don't have to overwhelm people with a whole new system in Crewmojo. You can literally start with one tiny thing, get people feeling confident and comfortable, and then start to introduce more as that muscle builds, if you like. So I think that's a tremendous success criteria of getting people on board.
We're always able to talk about this whole process. You were talking about agile before, of where, on our iPhones, we've got the little red button when our apps need to be updated. We're able to say the same thing, that we'll turn this one thing on, but just like your software updates or you update your apps, we'll turn on another tile, and then we'll turn on another, and then we'll turn on another and turn on another. And so that's been the case. And so people are like, oh yeah, I see that in my everyday life. So I can understand why you're doing it here as well. And it meant we could push out a minimum viable product relatively quickly.
Yeah, it's a very good way to go. Start small and then scale from there.
It then allows, from a people and culture perspective, to, as you keep turning on a new tile, it gives you a reason for talking about
great
performance,
point.
Gives you a reason for, in a constructive way, in a positive way, to continue to raise the profile of people and culture. Hey, we're turning on the quarterly tile. Hey, we're turning on a feedback tile. Hey, we're turning on a pulse survey tile. And so it just gives those opportunities for that continuing conversation.
That's a great point. I'd never thought of it from that angle. It really is a useful way to, as you say, to keep the communications up, but and keeping it front of mind. Is there other things that would be on your mind for where you would see you'd like to implement things, I don't know, over the next 12, 24 months?
Yeah, I think one of the areas for us might be to look at workflow tools. So this process of utilizing the platform for the pulse surveys, utilizing the platform for the culture champion nomination process. Are there other processes in the organization that we can similarly put onto the platform? So one of them, for example, because when we did the cultural champion awards, was around professional development. So there's a process at the moment, a form filling process and an approval process to do a course for professional development. Could something like that come into the platform, so that when someone's talking about it in their one-on-one, I've been looking at this micro certificate at university, then in the platform they can start filling out the professional development form, which then goes to the leader, who goes, oh yeah, I know about that because you just talked about it in our one-on-one. And then that goes through the process. So they're a couple of things that I'm thinking about.
The platform will absolutely help you with that. Those, what you mentioned there, the workflows and what we call experiences are absolutely going gangbusters at the moment with customers like that. We've put a lot of effort to make them very flexible. So that use case you described there, it would handle very, very easily and probably make lives a lot easier rather than having to go through paper.
Paper. That's exactly right. And that whole process of trying to get signatures and so on. Again, if it's in one place, then and a tool and a program that people are familiar with, then that's really good as well. And again, that gives us another reason for talking to people from a people and culture perspective. Hey, we're talking about performance. Now we're talking about your development. We talked about your health and well-being. So it's just those continual opportunities to have those conversations around the entire life cycle.
Is there anything else that you would like to add? Is there anything that we've not discussed that you would like to share? Or
the partnership process and approach is just so important that it does need to be an organisation both ways, where the organisations can feel like they do have that respectful relationship. They can learn from each other. They respect each other's what the other brings to the table. That I think has been a big part of what's made this work as well.
We really enjoy getting close with our customers and understanding what they're trying to achieve and how, and the more that we can help that process, and I say as always, learn from them as well. It's very mutual, as you say. So we really appreciate that relationship and the partnership that we do have too. And thanks, Padam. I really appreciate you coming on the show today. You've been very helpful, sharing lots of insights, and I'm sure the listeners will get a lot from this. So thanks again, Padam.
No problem at all, and happy for people to reach out if they've got questions.
Where's best to reach you?
Yep. LinkedIn, is probably the best place. My name's pretty easy to find.
Awesome. We'll put those. We'll put your LinkedIn profile in the show notes anyway.
Perfect.
Good stuff.
Have a great day, Mark. Thanks again.
Thanks, Padam.